Among these hills, fields and rolling plains, history merges with prehistory. A king of Wessex once had his palace here, and from his chief town, called Wilton, the county of Wiltshire has taken its name. But men have planted crops here for millennia. The people of a Stone Age cleared primeval forests and were first to win a living from soils weathering from the chalk, limestone and clays of these plains and downs. Today, their monuments and graves remain to be explored by Wiltshire's modern travellers. The county's famous white horses are not as ancient as might be thought. This one at Westbury is the oldest. The turf outline was first cut in 1742. Filled in with chalk, the horse, 55 metres long, dominates the Vale of Pewsey. Live sheep greatly outnumber the white horses, as do the dairy cattle and the pigs that have made Wiltshire renowned for its livestock industry. You're never far from a farm when walking the country lanes. And for generations, the barns have been a seasonal home for house martins and swallows. Natural tourists, these migratory birds have flown in from Africa. The soft mud is material ideal for plastering a nest into shape under the eaves of an outbuilding. Under an English sun, the crops are ripening. Changes in the way they are harvested has brought modern sounds and new sights to the fields. Round bales of straw or hay are certainly more practical today, but there's still room for the hand-stacked stooks of yesteryear and for the older machinery that once did all the reaping. The game never changes for the dog. There are mice and voles in the stubble. And for these men, the harvest is a special one. They are cutting the crop in this old-fashioned way for an old-fashioned purpose. The straw they are handling so carefully is material for an ancient craft. This crop is the raw material for the business of thatching, essential in most villages along Wiltshire's winding lanes. On a drowsy afternoon, the air is heavy with the scent of fresh-cut fields and noisy with insects. The wanderer is faced with a choice of lanes to explore and villages to find. Figgledene, Fittleton, Bapton and Stockton. The names have a music of their own, and each seems to stand in a time capsule, caught between past and present. Clichés of country life, they please the eye and seduce us to desire such storybook dwelling. But on the balmy days of summer, the storms of winter should never be out of mind. And Wiltshire's many cottages that rely on roofs of straw need the time-honoured skills of a master craftsman. Carefully chosen, the sheaves are layered and pegged, firmly packed and anchored to the beams below, and trimmed like a tidy beard. This thatch must shed the most torrential of rains, and last for several years. There are houses and cottages in Laycock, one of England's most beautiful villages, that show how the style of buildings has changed during 700 years. A 15th century inn stands amidst dwellings in brick, flint, stone and timber from the 14th to the 18th centuries. Dormer windows, eaves, overhangs and gables bring delightful variety to every street. A journey in time round every corner. When these were built, the House of Tudor was on the throne. The house has been altered since then, raising questions. What was the opening here once used for? Ghosts of past ages haunt every street, if you've an eye to see them. A coaching inn of the 1700s faces a medieval tithe barn, with a lock-up attached that held the villains of a bygone Laycock. Wiltshire's streams and rivers still turn the wheels of industries large and small. In Castle Combe, the Bye-Brook enhances one of Britain's favourite film locations. But long before Dr. Dolittle walked by, this medieval market cross was the heart of a weaving industry. In nearly every cottage, looms were always busy. History decorates every corner of Castle Combe, a village once voted England's prettiest. A village pond was once a watering hole for cattle on the move. The tracks to these natural crossroads became today's lanes, and the first cottages, built beside the pond, became the heart of a growing village. The story of a village is written in stone or brick, depending on where that village was born in the Shire. The old drovers would marvel at their waterhole's new setting. Imagination can show us the pond with more than the waterfowl of today. And imagination can recall that age of grand houses and gracious living that gave us Laycock Abbey. Once a 13th century nunnery, it entered private family ownership at the command of Henry VIII. The family were ancestors of William Fox Talbot, a pioneer of photography. His first photograph was of a window in this house. Other houses, such as Corsham Court, also commemorate the wealthy heritage of Wiltshire. An 18th century fortune from trading in wool allowed the Methuen family to buy the 16th century building on the site of a royal Saxon manor house. Nash, Bellamy, Capability Brown and Humphrey Repton all contributed their skills to the house and grounds we can visit today. The streams and rivers close by many of Wiltshire's grandest houses afforded great sport for their wealthy owners. The clear chalk streams were carefully managed, and banks strengthened and cleared of obscuring plants, giving clear views and access. Anglers then, and now, share the river with its wildlife. In early summer, Grey wagtails are busy catching insects to feed their broods in nests somewhere near the water's edge. Mayflies, dragonflies and water beetles make up a meal for 5 or 6 chicks. The peace along the streams and rivers is one of Wiltshire's most desirable qualities. The quiet lap of ripples against the shore, the buzz and hum of insects skimming the surface of gin-clear water that's been filtered by the chalk of the hills. Those are banded demoiselles, a delicate damselfly. Water plants act as perches for damselflies and dragonflies in streams where brown trout emerge from the weed to hunt insects. Youngsters have fished for brown trout, legally and illegally, for centuries, in rivers that today look almost unchanged. Emerged from its nymph case, a common hawker dragonfly rests its unravelled wings. Colours and scents bring pollinating insects to the riverside, among them bees and butterflies, working hard to survive. Their urgent activity contrasts with the idleness of the summer days some people like to spend along the Wiltshire River. But others of us find alternative sport. How you spend your time is up to you. There's room for all kinds of relaxation in this county of waterways. Reach for your pocket bird guide and it will tell you that these are tufted ducks. The drakes have a tuft of feathers at the back of the head. Out of the wind, the tuft is sometimes hard to see. This coot is far more busy. With its partner, it's building a nest among the reeds. Such things are easily seen by any traveller with time to look. As a poet said, "What is this life, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare? No time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows. No time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars, like skies at night. No time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet, how they can dance. No time to wait till her mouth can enrich that smile her eyes began. A poor life this, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare." Orchids advertise their scented nectar to insects night and day. The wildflowers of Wiltshire's chalk downlands draw people from all over the world to paint or photograph them, or just to look and admire. Farmhouses hide in the folds of the Wiltshire landscape. Pewsey's Vale, Marlborough's Downs and Cranbourne Chase have been patterned and shaped by people for centuries. A history book of arable farming lies open across this land. Buildings come and go, but from the shroud of nettles round a barn, new life emerges. Caterpillars of peacock butterflies take their last meal before transforming into one of Britain's most colourful insects. Wiltshire's ancient meadows will offer a feast of nectar to the peacocks on the wing. The butterflies will stake out their territories along woodland rides, in farm gardens, and wherever nettles are abundant, which is where they'll lay their eggs. These meadows hold a rich legacy of Britain's floral past. This diversity of flowers has so easily been lost wherever our farming relied too heavily on chemical assistance. New methods, often the old methods, can guarantee a future for several plants the old herbalists knew and valued. This is also butterfly country, and a host of different kinds mingle their colours among the flowers. These are meadow browns. They caught the eye of the poet John Clare, who perhaps stood in a field of scabious and thistles, where their old visitors in russet brown, the haytime butterflies, dance up and down. Small tortoiseshells are also drawn to thistles and to nettles. They live here all year round, hibernating in old barns and houses. They're among Britain's most familiar butterflies. Surprisingly, the marbled white is a member of the brown family. Technically, it's a black butterfly with white spots, and it does look a bit like marble. The landscapes that hold all these insect treasures are often accepted as natural, but in reality it's a managed countryside, and over the centuries people have left all kinds of marks upon it. On Fovant Down in 1916, soldiers from a nearby training camp cut their regimental badges into the turf. Then they left to serve on the Western Front in the Great War. Recently, their badges, and later ones, have been restored by clearing and replenishing the chalk. Many are poignant reminders of men who never returned from France. Silbury Hill is a reminder, too, of people 4,000 years ago, who piled up the largest artificial mound in Europe. The famous henge on Salisbury Plain was also started then, an earthwork for burials, to which was added later blue stones from Wales, and great sarsen stones from the nearby Marlborough Downs. Skillfully cut and jointed, the Stonehenge remains standing, an ancient solar observatory, aligned with the rising sun of Midsummer Day. A place of mystery and wonder, it's still in use by Celtic Druids as a temple for the worship of the sun, perhaps its original purpose. The ancient market towns of Wiltshire, such as Malmesbury, are as much a monument to generations past as any of the henges, long barrows, or other earthworks. It grew around a monastery established in the 7th century. These later medieval buildings were part of the weaving centre that developed close to the Bristol Avon in Saxon Britain. Ancient and modern sit side by side in these North Wiltshire towns. Modern shoppers pass through a market cross dated 1490. Carefully restored, it's a stone treasure of Malmesbury. In southeastern Wiltshire, still close to limestone country, the church and town are built with stone. Towns further east are mostly made of brick or flint. Was a bell in the tower of St. Michael's Church, the bell that William Barnes, a local schoolmaster and poet, had in mind when he wrote, "It was a chilly winter's night, and frost was glittering on the ground, and evening stars were twinkling bright, and from the gloomy plain around came no sound. But where, within the wood-girt tower, the church bell slowly struck the hour, as if that of all human birth had risen to the final day, and soaring from the worn-out earth were called in hurry and dismay far away. And I alone of all mankind were left in loneliness behind." William Barnes was still alive in 1866 when this clock tower was put up where the old market house once stood in Mere. Wander across southern Wiltshire and find a dozen sleepy towns like Mere, nestling in the hollows of the hills. The map will show you names like Hindon, Chicksgrove and Tisbury, each awaiting discovery. All are surrounded by England's finest countryside. Let serendipity be your guide. There are many happy chance finds to please you here. Once on the main route between London and the West Country, Marlborough retains a distinguished air as a market town. The wide High Street is still crowded with traffic, perhaps taking a momentary diversion from the motorway. High Street buildings are of brick and tile. No thatch has been allowed since a series of serious fires in the 17th century. There are echoes of the old stagecoach days in the exteriors of the inns. But behind the picturesque facades of several distinctive centuries, Marlborough is a prosperous, modern town. Old and new also mingle at Bradford-on-Avon. 4 highways converge at the bridge across the river. They once brought materials for the flourishing textile industry and then carried the products out to the world. Age has given the town the grace and beauty that now brings people to live here, it's not far from Bath, or to visit and discover gems like this lock-up on the bridge. It once held the odd overindulged drinker, but also real villains on their way to jail. Waterways, as well as highways, made Wiltshire's market towns a thriving focus for their industries. Too much traffic threatens to swamp the streets that were designed for slower days. But Bradford-on-Avon is a visitor's delight when explored on foot. Much of this town is on a hillside, inaccessible to traffic. The climb is worth the effort, and there are shops to sell you sustenance as you explore. You may find something new. Even residents didn't know that among these buildings they had a Saxon church here, till it was found in 1871. And that takes the history of Bradford-on-Avon back to the year 700, an extraordinary link to that distant age. The tide of traffic rises, and all old towns are victims of its noise and pollution. But if it can solve this problem, Bradford-on-Avon is still a town with a viable present as well as a past. Salisbury Cathedral's elegant spire, the tallest in Britain, is a beacon, drawing visitors from miles around. Salisbury is Wiltshire's only city, by virtue of having a cathedral, and in elegance and style it lives up to its status. Here, medieval and later centuries of architecture jostle to be seen, side by side, at the heart of a thriving commercial centre founded on the cloth trade. It's a city to relax in and wonder at the history all about. Within the old city walls lies the cathedral close, as cloistered a part of a modern town as can be imagined. Stone figures from medieval times share our recreation, bridging the centuries. The cathedral, world famous for its sacred music as well as its stunning design, is a jewel in Wiltshire's crown. Several rivers meet at Salisbury, adding water to be enjoyed by resident and visitor alike. Wiltshire is a mosaic of beauty and practicality, a living land, thriving on its ancient heritage. Canals were vital arteries to this commercial county. They added new waterways to the river system. The railways replaced them, but now they've been rediscovered and enjoy a new life for both business and pleasure. The sounds and sights of Wiltshire are a glorious mix of the ancient and modern. History walks the highways, lanes and rivers. Sounds of a world both old and new hang on the air. There is something for everyone, a surprise round every corner. Just go there and look.